let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. Those of you who are live here tonight, welcome aboard. And for those of you who will be watching on YouTube afterwards, a belated welcome to you all as well. Welcome to the Sydney Excel User Group, our third session. And today we have David Benaim with us, who's going to be running the session on where Google Sheets beats Excel. Couple of quick things before we start. The first thing is that I'd like to acknowledge the Galaga of the Aurora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land. Pay my respects to the elders, both past and present. If you are going to be on this call, and if you're live, again, welcome. Please stay on mute unless you're presenting or unless you're asking a question. If you do want to ask a question, use the raise hand tool to indicate that you want to ask, or type the question in the chat, and I'll try and keep track of that and let David know at a time that's kind of suitable. Importantly, please show other people respect and consideration. For those of you who aren't aware what this whole Sydney Excel user group is, the goal is basically to bring Excel users around to share ideas, tips, and tricks. It's not intended to be some really specific financial modeling specific or actuarial specific or statistical specific sort of group. The idea is that it's available to anyone who's using Excel, and you'll be able to learn from a range of different Excel experts. The idea is that we're going to use this group to basically help raise awareness of all the different tools that are available within the Excel and the Office family, and try and promote best practices to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of what you do on a day-to-day basis. So today, with that in mind, we're not actually going to be talking quite as much about Excel. We're going to be looking at its competitor, Google Sheets. And David is a fantastic person to lead us through this topic. So what I might do is pass it over to you, David, because you're probably better suited to introduce yourself rather than me kind of read out a blurb that you've given me. So do you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. I will share my screen. Use this new option, which means that you won't lose me when I share my screen. So you should see a pop-up of me on the side. Hello. Great. Okay. So let me get started with a demo, and then I'll do the introduction. So just to give you an idea of the kind of thing that you can do in Google Sheets, this is the script from a language called Khmer, which is the native language in the country where I'm living in, which is Cambodia. And I had this issue today where I wanted to translate a column and provide them with a data validation list. So what did I do? I copied it from Excel to Google Sheets, because Google Sheets does this and Excel doesn't. And you can do equals Google Translate, and you can click on the text, press a comma. Source language, you just need to know the two-letter code. KM is Khmer, and then in speech marks, EN for English, to translate it from one to the other one. And then it translates. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. There is so much stuff that Google Sheets can do that Excel doesn't even come close to being able to achieve this. And that is one of the reasons why I actually end up using Google Sheets instead of Excel, despite the fact that I'm a Microsoft Excel MVP and Google Sheets people don't know that I exist. I end up building custom solutions, sometimes in Google Sheets instead of Excel. And I'll give you instances of those as we go along. So it all started when I wrote an article in June 2018, so that's 3 years ago now, called 7 Things That Google Does Better Than Excel. And I wrote this article, as I said, 3 years ago, but then Excel ended up adding, essentially copying 3 of these features within the next 6 months. So Excel is taking a lot of the ideas from Google Sheets and then adapting it. One of those is the very, very commonly known one, dynamic arrays. Dynamic arrays existed in Google Sheets far before it existed in Excel. And to this day, I would argue that dynamic arrays is much better in Google Sheets than Excel. That's one of the things I'll show you later today. So my name is David Benaim. I have a YouTube channel with over 3,000 subscribers at the moment, 3,200, I think. So I just started about 1.5 years ago. I do videos on not just spreadsheets, but a lot on Excel, probably the most on Excel, a lot on Google Sheets, Power BI, PowerPoint, Microsoft Teams, Zoom. If you're using tech at the workplace, then I'm probably covering it on my YouTube channel. And I have a whole portfolio devoted to Google Sheets. I have another one devoted to Excel, and I love Power Query, so I have a whole one devoted to Power Query as well. I am also an MVP, so I became a Microsoft MVP about 1.5 years ago. And that means that, like Tim and Danielle on this call, we are privy to a lot of the stuff that is coming soon to Excel. Microsoft is in constant communication with us about where Excel is going to go in future and getting our feedback on some certain features, pre-release features, if we have any recommendations for that. And yeah, and they enjoy the fact that we're spreading knowledge about Excel throughout it. So I'm also a chartered accountant, and I have set up my own company in Cambodia, and we do corporate training and consulting. So I've done training for over 2,000 people, mostly in Excel, but also in other strategies like presentation skills and email and task management. And we've done consulting with over 120 organizations. Again, a lot of the stuff that I do is based around data. Power BI features heavily, but we do all sorts of other consulting around tech as well. So where Google Sheets beats Excel, there's 6 aspects to what I'm going to cover. We're going to look at co-authoring. We're not going to spend much time on that because this is something that pretty much everyone knows. Then we're going to drift off into tables and pivot tables, section that I call idiot proofing, looking at currency data, and then dynamic arrays, and finally crossing the finish line, and we'll do a recap. And as Tim said, if you have any questions, then you can raise your hand, and then we can see. I'll try and come back to the questions later on. So let's get going with co-authoring. So I'm not going to cover the basics because both Excel and Google Sheets now can do simultaneous editing of files. They can have files that are saving live all the time. They can do filter views. So if you're in a file at the same time, then I can be looking at one filter view and Danielle could be looking at another filter, and it's not affecting each other. And files on demand, so you can download the file and work on it offline. You can do this with Google Sheets. A lot of people think it's an online only tool, but you can actually work on it offline and then it uploads when you're back online. But I'm going to go through the special stuff that Google does and Excel doesn't. So let's jump into a demo. Excel, I find it's a little bit clunky. It often gives you errors and says we weren't able to merge the files when you're doing it. It also can be slower to save, which I don't like too much. But Google Sheets has some extra benefits. So let's look at the benefits here. Notifications. Notifications are just so nice. You can just go to the Tools tab and you can say you want notification rules. And I can just say, whenever any changes is made in the entire spreadsheet, notify me via my email. And you can either get a daily digest, which means you only get notified once a day, or you can get notified immediately. Super easy, super straightforward. You just get an email in your inbox whenever something is met like this. Or a user submits a form is the other one. That is if you use Google Forms linked to Google Sheets. Something you can do as well with Microsoft Forms, but you would do that through Microsoft Forms, not through Excel. Microsoft Forms, by the way, if you haven't tried it, is a great product, as is Google Forms. Every time someone sends me a questionnaire or a form in a Word document, I always just like why are you living 15 years behind technology? This is just going to take you so long to go back and change it. It's super easy to use, Google and Microsoft Forms, and I highly recommend that people use it. It's an application that I use a couple of times a week. Not as much as Excel or Outlook, but probably as much as I use Word, maybe even more than I use Word. So then we've also got the name, we've got link here and movies and a few other things in these columns. Here's what I really like. Let's say that you tell someone you want them to be able to edit this. So you can select this column, this sequence of cells, you can right click and you can say get link to this range. Quite simply, it just copies a link that will take someone to that exact range. So it's really good for being like, hey buddy, I want you to edit these cells and here is the link that I want you to be able to edit. You can also get it to a cell. If you just click a cell, get link to this cell. Then you have edit history. So over here, I've assigned this task to someone through a comment. You can right click on any task and choose to show edit history. And what this is saying is that every single cell, it logs what it is and what it was before. Now, it's a bit mean of me to say that Excel doesn't have this, because Excel Online very recently launched this, like a month ago. I did a video on it on my YouTube channel, the Excel version. The Excel version is probably even more sophisticated, but it's a really good one to be aware of. So next we have, I talked about filter views. So with filter views, again, you can create a new filter view. It gives you this black outline. And I keep talking about how, Excel and Google Sheets copy each other. They copied this feature, Excel copied this feature right down to this black outline to remind you of it being here. The main benefit of this is that when I am editing it, when I'm filtering it, no one else is seeing this filter, only me. But the secondary benefit is you can also save a filter view. So if you have multiple things like this, the way this is filtering, you can save it over here and then get back to it later on. So filter views, as I said, is currently in Excel. It's called Sheet View in Excel. But notifications linked to the cell are not at all there. I'll show you Protect a little bit later on. Great. And then here's another version of that. Here's another version of that Google Translate. So I can say, welcome to the Sydney meetup. Translate that into French. Yeah, you can, by the way, say auto in the first one, and then it will automatically choose a source language. So that's good with obscure languages like Khmer, but that's why I had to do it specifically, but it is able to do this quite well. So it's translating it here into Chinese, into Hebrew, into Khmer, into Spanish, and then back to English. And notice how it dropped some things from the start to the end. That's again using the Google Translate feature. Some of the other things, sneak preview, I love that you can put photos in cells. You can use images in cells. Excel does not come close to this. You can then reference them in lookups, in pivot tables, or anywhere else in the infrastructure. And we'll look at protecting sheets, which is another thing that Google does better. All right, so with mobile, Excel Mobile does a pretty good job. If you haven't used it, it does actually allow you to sort of type in the cells, and you can select a row, and then it will show you what's in that row in this kind of card view that allows you to edit it there. Google Sheets does also have a mobile feature. I personally find it a little bit less clunky, but that's more based on my preference of Google Drive over OneDrive. Cool. So let's go into tables next. So Excel does have a feature called a table, format as table, something that I really, really love, although it seems like very, very few of Excel's daily users actually knows it exists. But when it comes to sheets, you don't quite have the same, but you have kind of a lighter version of it. And there's reasons why I like the lighter version of it. And then there's pivot tables I'll show you as well. Let me Alt tab to my spreadsheet. Over here. So this is alternating colors. And if you're familiar with Excel tables, then this allows you to add a new column, and then all the formatting sort of comes across. And if I add a new row, yeah, because that's another one. And new row, I can see the formatting comes across as well. But that is the only thing that the alternating formats does. Let me add it to a sort of blank data set. So I go here. So here I have kind of a blank data set. I can say that I want to go to format and then alternating colors. Choose a style that you like, and it just gives you that around there. It's pretty good. So yeah, another thing is if you want to rename a file, then there's no drama. You can just do it by being right inside the thing. So this is Toronto, but actually I'm using this for the Sydney meetup. So let's do Sydney meetup. I did that just to show you that you can rename it directly here. The way that Google Drive stores files is just much better than OneDrive, I think, and it allows you to do certain things like see this, see the edit history, see the previous versions, etc. So next up, we have over here a pivot table. So a pivot table, as you know, you can get to it from the Insert tab in Excel. In Google Sheets, it's in the Data tab, which may make more sense, but not a big deal. So if I insert a pivot table here, I then get this dialog box. Looks a little bit different. It's a little bit more clunky to set up than Excel. I'm not going to lie. If you go to rows, you need to go to, say, continent, and then I can't just drag. Oh, yeah. Sorry, you can drag them. This is brand new. They just put this in, but you can't just do the tick box and then it goes into values or rows, which is something that's easier in that one. But if I drag in numbers into values, then I can get a count, but I can change that over here to a sum, and it gives me the sum. But the beauty about this is that it does automatically update, and that for me is a huge, huge, huge thing. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say that I am going to add a new city and continent in a different place. So I'm going to say this is Oceania and Sydney. Now I can see here, I've got Sydney that's been added there. Perfect. And here I've got Oceania that's been added there. No clicking on manually refreshing things. That makes such a massive difference in terms of what you can create with Google Sheets, because you can just send this to someone. You don't need to remind them to refresh it. And if it's got this random between numbers, sometimes it does just refresh anyway. I mean, I can get why when Excel created pivot tables in the 1990s, auto refresh took up too much computing power, but it's 2021 and I have more power in this tiny little smartphone here than we did in those computers. So I have no idea why they haven't instituted automatic refresh yet. But it is something that I think is very, very, very useful. All right, some other things. Let's say you want to know in each of these continents how many cities there are. So you would do that with Excel, and I would see that there are 6 cities in Asia. But then if I try and get what those 6 cities in Asia are, add some filters and go to Asia, I can see that actually it's 1, 2, 3, and then these are all duplicates. So 6 is not really helpful if I want to know how many cities there are in Asia covered. What we need is another feature. What we need is, instead of having a count A, to have a count unique Can't do that in Excel, so I love it in Google Sheets. It's so easy to do. Count unique is also a function, as is count unique ifs, like count ifs, count unique ifs. I use this all the time. Really, really fantastic. So you have here, the other one you get here is median that you don't get in Excel. So that's another interesting one. Something that I've wanted to do. I've also wanted to do quartiles before and wanted to do concatenation or text joins. Those are both very difficult in Excel and Google Sheets unless you use a special dynamic array function. So another small thing that I like about Google Sheets is the way that it deals with dates inside pivot tables. So let's say I do rows and values here. So you can right click and you can choose create pivot table group and you get year and month. This is great. This is perfect. It does them in the cell and it doesn't aggregate then by 2019 and have subcategories. For me, this works much, much better than the way that Excel does it. For each one though, I mean, you can have another date column. If you want to aggregate it, you can. You can have another date column that is then looking at a year, something like that. But it is kind of in your power to do it. And here you have show totals, yes or no, and repeat row labels. Something that is much easier to do in Sheets than Excel. Google Sheets, in my opinion, just took like let's say it took about 30% of what pivot tables in Excel can do, but it took the right 30% and left out the very rarely used 70%. Not that I never use the other stuff, but really the majority of the stuff that I use is here. And it's easier to use because there is less to it. The filters it has as well. They did recently introduce slices. I will say, though, that I think the slices don't look very good. They first require you to choose this. And every time you need to click something down, you need to select the filter, which I think defeats the purpose of slices and essentially makes them more like filters. Excel slices are much nicer and easier to handle. All right, so there's the table segment. Keep going. So I can stop now if there's any questions. Let me have a look at the chat. Okay, quite a few things here. I
think there was a question from Henry.
Yeah. So there's no pivot cache then in Google. I believe not. I'm not sure exactly how the technical stuff behind the scenes works, but I just know that it automatically refreshes. I'm not completely aware of that. I mean, there is something that gets it from the source to the output that's non-formula based, but it doesn't work there. And Danielle likes count unique. Yes. Tim says, I wonder if there is in Power BI quick measure that does similar things, whether they'll eventually port that to Excel. Yeah, like a count unique. Potentially, that could be a good idea because it is a formula that you could write now that you have the unique function, but it's kind of hard to get it there. All right, idiot proofing. So idiot proofing is a fancy term I use for like spreadsheet protection and data validation. So drop-down lists or pop-ups that say you cannot do something. So this is really the feature and the place where I think Google Sheets excels. Sorry, Excel. Google Sheets is just way better than Excel at this stuff. And when I say that I create custom solutions for a customer project in Google Sheets instead of Excel, it's usually because of this, or this is usually one of the main reasons. Checkboxes are so nice and easy. Look at that. You can click them and tick them. So lovely, so easy to do. You can multi-select, press space, and they all get ticked. You can allocate values to them. So I can say equals sum of tick boxes. If I allocate a value to them, it will give me 0, but I could say that these ones need a value allocated to them by going to data validation. And I can say use custom values. Let's say checked means 3 and unchecked means 1. So then you can add them together. You can also have it actually as an output of a cell. This is something I recently learned. So I could, where have I got a lot? Yeah, here I've got some superheroes. Yeah, sure. Here I've got a lot of 6s. So I could select it and I could say that these are insert checkboxes. You can add them either through data validation or through that. But then I could say data validation. I can say checked if it's 6 or unchecked otherwise. Oh, I think I need to do it and then have the formula afterwards. I have done this before. I could say insert checkbox and data validation. I could say checked is 6 and unchecked is 1. I guess works the best with binary, and I could say equals this plus 1. And there you go, it's checked. Whenever I have 5, yeah, it is able to do that through formulas, which is quite nice. But I just love it to give people the opportunity to just tick them. It's just so easy to use. And it's the reason, yeah, it's just so much nicer. I know Excel has the form controls, but they're so clunky. They make your spreadsheet really heavy, and you have to do them one by one. So it's just so tedious, and it's not a solution. Date pickers, whenever you select a cell that has a date, so I can just write here 6th of April, or I create a data validation of a date and double click it and get a date picker. It's just so nice. It's there, it's built in. Alternatively, as I said, if you just select some other cells like here and go to data and data validation and choose a date. Also, this is nice. I mean, Excel will, for date, it'll say, do you want it greater than or less than? Because it treats it like a number, which I know behind the scenes is what the spreadsheet program is doing, but it's nice to be able to say before and after instead. So before 31 Jan 2021, reject input, press OK. And then I can double click it and get a date picker and choose a valid date like that. So that's all well and good, but that's not really the reason why I love this. I love this because it just makes data entry more robust. And what I mean by that is over here, I have a hierarchical drop-down list. We always talk about hierarchical drop-down lists in Excel. If I Google Excel hierarchical or dependent drop-down lists, we have thousands of solutions, how to do it, blog posts, videos. One of the videos is even mine. 5 ways. This is my video. This is my other one for Google Sheets. So there's thousands of ways you can do this, and people think it's very, very important to do, but that is only because Excel is very limited, and Excel does them through a very difficult way. So what are we going to do? If I just create this structure, so I'm going to take this list and copy and paste it in here. And I'm going to apply this to another table here. So I'm going to say for these cells, data validation, and list from a range. I'm going to choose these. I know what you're thinking. I can do that in Excel. That's not anything special. But here's the big difference. As I start typing, get the drop down that I can choose from. I can press enter to lock it in. You can search through any letter inside the cell. So as long as it's the first letter. So if I have U, can be UK, US, can be, yeah, in different places there. and you can press tab to lock it in. So it is a searchable autocomplete validation list. This is something that Excel needs to absolutely do, because this makes, when you have data entry en masse, and you have people who are entering like 200 rows of data a day, which happens very, very often, then they can either do with Excel, where they click and have to scroll down through a very long list, or with dependent lists, they have to enter in 3 different columns. With Google Sheets, it's much easier to set up, and they can do it all in one column just by typing. And it makes data entry up to like 10 times faster if they have to do it very, very fast. Like I've used this on some projects, and I absolutely love it, the autocomplete factor. I mean, we use autocomplete all the time, right? I mean, you know, let's say you're booking a flight. Back when we were able to book flights, and you search for an airport, could you imagine if you have to scroll down this list through every single airport in the world to get there? Or if you had one column that was like continent, then country, then city, it would just be so tedious. You want to be able to type in here, like, you know, Cairo, and then get it to autocomplete. You want to be able to say, well, CA can be everything, or United Kingdom can be any one of these. London is showing me over here because it's the capital of the United Kingdom, Dubai and United Emirates. You want to be able to have this flexibility, and Excel just does not offer that. Now, again, I will give it credit because Excel Online just implemented this feature very, 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 very recently. Excel Desktop has not, but Excel Online is able to do a version of this. It's not quite as slick as Google's, but it does still work with the same idea. So I have already implemented that with Excel Online. I have a video that I made, which is if you are still an Excel person, one of my more recent ones, what Excel Online does better, because I'm now starting to actually use Excel Online as a companion app where I do most of my stuff in Excel Desktop, but I do some stuff in Excel Online. Let me post this in the chat, actually, so you can check it out and check out my channel whilst you're watching as well. Stop sharing for a sec. Great. Yeah, Tim Heng just also said that it's searchable, is available online yet. It's great. All right, good. So some other stuff. Where were we here? Yep, the other thing you'll notice if I show you the original drop-down list is that I do here have duplicates. So Google Sheets will automatically ignore duplicates in a drop-down list. These two are the same. And if I go here, I only see one. Excel will not automatically ignore duplicates. It will also automatically ignore blanks, which is fantastic because I want people to be enter things in this list. I can go to data validation and I can say they need to look over here, drag down as far as I want. Doesn't matter because the duplicates are completely ignored in the drop-down list, which is how it should be, I think. Now you have better ways than you used to make auto-expanding lists, but Google just makes it easier than all of those. Okay, protection, spreadsheet protection. I think spreadsheet protection in Excel is terrible. I've told the Microsoft people this. I've shared it with them multiple times. I hope they're taking the feedback on board. It's very clunky. It hasn't been updated in 30 years. Here's what I love about Google's one. It's so simple, but it fixes 90% of the things you would want to do with spreadsheet protection. Go to Protect Sheet, and then select a sheet or a range. So I can select, for example, this range. And then I press OK and set permissions. And what I usually just do is show a warning when editing this range. Let me show you what that does. That means if someone tries to do this, you just get this pop-up. You're trying to edit the part that shouldn't be edited accidentally. Do you want to edit it anyway? You can press OK and edit it anyway. You can say, don't show this again for 5 minutes. if you're doing some constructive work. But this just stops all those accidental edits, which is, for me, 99% of why I would want to use Spreadsheet Protection. I would usually just select all my formula cells, add that protection, and then it stops. The other way you can do it is by user, which is something that you can't do in Excel as well. So I could say, choose who can edit it, so only me, or custom, and then I can tick on the people who can edit it. It's not something I use that often, but it is something that you can do. Excel's I find really cumbersome and very granular, which is not necessarily that useful. Good. Okay, I've finished that section. I'm gonna pause for a second. Sorry, I will be back in 1 minute. So hang on, let me know if you have any questions, write them in the chat. And I will be back very, very soon.
Cool. I think while David's away, Danielle, you're probably still around as well, I'm sure. And if anyone does have any questions about, I guess, what David's been sharing about anything at all, feel free to unmute and ask while we've got the opportunity.
I kind of had a question I was wanting to ask, and you might know the answer to this. Tim was like, what would happen if you like, I assume, when you've got new versions of Excel and then you use one of the fancy new functions and then try to open it up in a previous version. I guess the same thing would happen with Google. Like if you do a account unique or something like that, and then tried to open it in Excel, you just end up with an error, I suppose. Have you tried that? Or?
I don't think there's different versions of Google Sheets to
No, I mean, if you tried to open it in Excel rather than
if you're trying to open those files in Excel.
In the same way that you do with versions in Excel.
Does Excel let you open Google Docs files?
Yeah.
I think, is it not one way?
You can convert them, but you can't open a Google Docs in Excel, I don't think.
Yeah, I didn't think you could. Yeah.
Yeah, so you would just convert it to Excel. Yeah, so you would create something in Google Sheets and then you open it up in Excel. And then what happens to all your formulas and translate and things like that? Does that just fall over?
Oh, compatibility.
Yeah,
all the stuff that is not compatible will show you a value error in a formula. But Google does a pretty good job at converting things. It'll convert pivot tables, validation lists, conditional formatting, charts. It's not good at tables because Google doesn't really have tables. So tables can sometimes break, but it doesn't matter that much.
So Henry's got a question about performance differences between Google Sheets and Excel, particularly on very large workbooks and data sets. And I think if I've got a follow-on question on top of that as well, how does it differ whether you're online or offline? Because you were saying you can use Google Sheets offline. Does that impact performance much?
So firstly, I'd just say, personally, I don't end up using Google Sheets if I work with more than 5,000 rows of data. Maybe 5,000 is okay. 10,000, 20,000, I wouldn't really use Google Sheets for. I would use Excel. If that is the case, in some instances, the way that I've worked around it is I have different spreadsheets, different Google Sheets files that are linked together through an import range. It's not the prettiest solution, but it does work. There's definitely no Power Pivot equivalent where you can have hundreds of millions of rows of data. Excel is better when you have wider performance. Using Google Sheets offline, I actually haven't tested that point, Tim. I'm pretty sure it's the same performance when it's online and offline, because you're still doing it through a browser, but it's not something that I've tested. Yeah, good question. All right, let me show you the last couple of things. So Google Finance. The Google Finance function is pretty great. I've created something like this. So I can say here, you know, US dollar, and then I can compare them to every other currency using the live rates, the 7-day, 30-day, and 365-day trend. There's a lot of stuff going on here. So the Google Finance function can look up an exchange rate. Excel recently mimicked this with a stock history function, but Google's can give you a lot more parameters. Other things that are going on is here I have the 7, 30, and 365-day trend in a spark line. Excel has spark lines as well, these in-cell line charts, but the difference is that Google's does them through a function. So you can actually nest a dynamic array that returns all of these values inside this and get this chart here. So I even have a more elaborate spreadsheet where I can write the function, Google Finance, let's say AAPL, Apple, attributes, I can say all, and then start date is going to be 1st of Jan 2010, and end date is going to be today. It says loading. There you go. It's going to be date, open, high, low, close, volume. So it's pretty nice. As I said, stock history can do a lot of this stuff now, which is pretty good. But Google allows you to do this. Another reason I love the autocomplete is because sometimes you just don't know how you're going to write it. If I want to write the pound, I might say, well, I'm going to search for British pound. Work now. What? It's not in there. Yeah, UK pound, I've called it. Yeah. But this is it. You can write different ways of saying it. I might say United Kingdom, I might say UK, and I've written the fact that I can type in any of those, or I can go straight to GBP. But all of those will give me the right answer with an autocomplete list. With Excel data validation, unless you know exactly what someone happened to call it, you won't be able to get there. You can have average historic exchange rates. And because Google Sheets has auto-updating pivot tables, you're able to do way more elaborate solutions like this. I have said to people, I have a video on Google Finance, and I've said, if you want a version of the spreadsheet, then let me know, and I can give it to you if you subscribe to my channel. And I've had probably over 100 people ask me for it. So let me know. I'll give you guys the same idea. If you want this, you can subscribe to my channel, and I will send it to you. It's a very, very useful spreadsheet. And going into dynamic arrays. So over here, get rid of these for now. I'm going to assume knowledge of dynamic arrays because it is a huge part that's just happened to Excel. So you do have the unique function, which allows you to select, for example, this and get only the unique values like that. You can sort them as well, same as you can with Excel. Google Sheets allows you to do sort n though, which says, for example, give me from these rows, give me the top 5 out of this column. So you can't do that with Excel, but I could say here, give me, yeah, exactly. I could say sort n, so sort, but go up to the 5th highest. So there's another function. And you get the filter command, works in both Google Sheets and Excel, but Google allows multiple conditions, condition 1, 2, 3. I know the advanced people will say so does Excel if you do the times or the plus, but that's not for the faint-hearted. Just make it easy for people to have multiple conditions. Why would you not? I don't really understand that. Then you have split. I do love split. So split allows you to say, well, from this column, have this column here, equals split. This one, comma, delimiter. So here I'm using this chevron, and then split by each true. I usually leave the last two blank. Just press enter, and I get the split like that. It's dynamic. It's like text to columns, but dynamic. If I add in, say, another one here, for example, it will give it to me in 4 columns. Pretty nice. If I have some text here, it will give me an error. Just like Excel gives you a spell error, it will give you a ref error. And if you point to it, it tells you what's going on. So pretty good. I do like that. A lot of people think that you can't do dynamic arrays on anything in Google Sheets, but actually you can. So you might have seen people do this plus this in Excel, and that would give you an answer. Google is now also suggesting this, but now what you can do is you could say equals, you just wrap array formula around it. So I could say equals this one plus this one, and then it will just give me those. So as long as you wrap array formula around a function, you can get it to do all of what Excel does pretty much. And then we have query function. And query function is the be all and end all. Once you've had to play with query, filter function just seems like child's play. So query, firstly, it can return the header column by default. Secondly, you can choose the ordering of the column as well as what you filter, and then you can do a whole lot of other stuff. Generally, all I do it for is selecting the order of the columns, returning the headers, and applying a filter. So for example, here, I could say equals query. And where's my data source? It's going to be here. I'm going to say the query. The query you actually write in SQL-like code. It's Google Visualization API query language, but it's quite similar. Although Tim was telling me it's not exactly the same, but it is quite similar. So I could say select and then A, C, B, E. So notice you can do this in any order you like and leave out any that you want. Then I could say where equals single quotations adult. And then close, enter. And it gives me that. Notice how it returns the headers, which Excel's dynamic arrays do not do. And it just gives it to you there. You can also do grouping by, pivoting. You can change the labels. You can change the number formats. I have a very comprehensive video on everything the query function can do. If you're interested in that. But yeah, so that's dynamic arrays. Just to close off though, let me show you some other kind of cleanup tricks. So these are some new features, so some people may not know about them, even if you're familiar with Google Sheets. So what you can do is Google Sheets now has a flash fill-like feature. So I can extract Europe here, and I can then give my next one, and then sometimes it recognizes it, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe I'll put that in. Google's is not as good as Excel's at suggesting it, but if it doesn't, then yeah, there we go. Formula suggestions. So you can tick it. But the beauty of that is it actually writes the formula for you, which Excel does not. Excel would just do flash fill and it's static. Google Sheets writes it for you. Even if you have, you know, the left one is the easiest one. Middle is quite hard. But it still is able to do a very complex formula for you. If it doesn't do it, then you can automate it through a formula. Okay, doesn't seem to be working right now, but usually it is a little bit clunky, but it does work. It also can give you VLOOKUPs as well through a different table. So it's a lot smarter. The feature's in its infancy though. and it's getting smarter and smarter as technology is moving forward. You also have, oh, this is really nice. You can, brand new feature, you can go to data and choose column stats. Column stats is great. Just gives you the distribution of it. So I can go to a text-based column here, for example, and say how many of each one there is. Really nice. And then get this summary stats. For someone that doesn't know pivot tables, this is so lovely. And if you have a numerical column, you can choose a distribution, which is a histogram, instead of using the numbers, instead of using every value, and tell it how many rows to ignore. So you leave out your headers. Really, really nice little feature. And then last one, in terms of data cleanup, let's say you have some preceding spaces and some trailing spaces. And here's some spaces in between. You can select a column and you can go to format, to data, and then trim white spaces. So nice, so easy to do. And you can do that with the trim function in Excel, but you normally want it to be in place. So you often will do that to another column and then copy and paste it back. So those are some features that Excel isn't able to do as well. So we covered currency and dynamic arrays, and getting to the finish line. So all this is very well and good, but Excel does have Power Query, and Google Sheets will never completely win me over because of Power Query. Power Query is unbelievable. If you haven't tried it, then I can't recommend it enough. It really, I made a video last year that was called Power Query, the tool that changed my career, and I really, really, really still believe that. When I learned Power Query for the first time, it just completely changed and made me into much more of a data person and much more data savvy in the way that I built everything spreadsheet database related. But when it comes to robust data entry, Google Sheets is better because you have data validation and you can use query to get things out of it much better. And also the split function, because I use this trick of hierarchies like so often, and using the split feature after that, the split formula is able to give me a lot more. Finally, this is a thing that I built in Google Sheets. I tried to do this in Excel, but it just didn't work. So we're keeping up to date with all the restrictions in Cambodia and the different provinces for COVID, and tick boxes, data validation all the way, autocomplete. And then I have here this is actually a pivot table, but I use conditional formatting to bring out the numbers. Because everything auto refreshes and auto updates, it just makes everything about this so much easier. So yeah, auto refreshing pivot tables are fantastic. Here's a feature list. If you use Excel 2013, 16, 19, of course, a lot of these things will not be available, but 365 versus Google Sheets. What I haven't yet added is Excel Online. I think I will add that to this list. Maybe I'll add that and then share it with Tim afterwards, because Excel Online, as I said, has some of these things, which is great. And yeah, there we are with Sheets. And again, tick boxes, they're so lovely. Why not have them? It's a great feature. Fantastic. All right, that's it for what I wanted to show you. I know it's a whistle-stop tour and I've gone through a lot, but yeah, we're coming up to 6 o'clock now.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. So I've certainly learned bits and pieces about Google Sheets that I wasn't aware of previously, which I will most definitely take on board for future development. Not to mention, like I recognize a lot of those features on user voice itself of people who've clearly used stuff on Google Sheets and then come demanding the Microsoft team to basically create things for it in Excel. So we're kind of at that stage in the evening where we kind of put it to everybody else to ask any questions. If anyone would like to sort of post a message in chat or raise your hand and unmute and come join us for a little chat, please feel free to do so. So I've got a couple of one quick question while we're waiting for other people. David, you mentioned I talked about the fact it's not actually SQL. I left a comment in the chat for you. It's the frustration is having to put A, B, D, and so on for your column referencing because it just doesn't feel robust when you do that. Do you know a way around it in Google Sheets?
No, I do not know. Yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, I sometimes get the opposite in Power Query. Like Power Query references the column names to the nth degree, and it will just break all the time. So I just learned to live with it, I guess, in both instances. But I did make a video about how to rename columns in Google Sheets without breaking them, which is a technique I'm using all the time now. But yeah, I think it's something that I end up just learning and living with. I end up building a query builder, really. That's what I end up doing. So the kind of thing you get in a database, like select name, select date range, and then it will just give you that list afterwards. And if you do that, then it can be dynamic in the query builder, because you can say, well, look up what the column name is in this thing, and then return it.
Does Sheets have something like indirect that would allow you to kind of craft out what your query should be in a formula somewhere and just feed it into query?
Yeah, it does have indirect. In terms of formulas that are in Excel but not Google Sheets, there is only one that I'm aware of, which is crazy because Google has loads of formulas that are in Sheets and not Excel. The only one I'm aware of is aggregate. That's not in Sheets. Well, and XLOOKUP, but XLOOKUP I am sure is on its way. So it's really like the other new ones are there, like text join, switch. Yeah, it really is just that one. And I think maybe sequence, but I don't think I've ever used that before. Yeah, no, sequence is there. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Then you had another comment which says you don't like the spill range being marked out. Yeah, I can echo that. That can be quite irritating. I often build like really complex spreadsheets that refer. I end up using dynamic arrays way more in Sheets than Excel, actually. I think because of query. Filter is just flexible, but I just don't see the need for it. But query, I can just build whatever I want.
Fair enough. That works. All right. Does anyone have any questions? I certainly don't want to monopolize things here. No, if not, then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to share the remaining presentation, PowerPoint slides. So next month, we don't have a speaker lined up. So I am going to basically just open it up as an Ask Us Anything sort of session. So last Wednesday of July, we'll make it 8 p.m. again. Bring your questions. We'll have an Ask Us Anything free-for-all for anyone who wants to come along. So yeah, tell your friends, everyone's welcome. No topic will be off limits. Maybe, Danielle, this can be the sort of groundwork for your debate that you want to have between Google Sheets and Excel. Maybe that's what we can do next month. But for those who aren't aware, Danielle's also agreed to run a session on dynamic arrays and financial modeling in August, which I believe is the last Wednesday of August as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle. I can't remember if we made it the last Wednesday or the second last Wednesday.
I think it was the 18th, actually, just because of my schedule.
Second last Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah, 18th. Yeah.
Cool.
And we were going to try and get together face to face, but I don't know if that's going to be practical.
I don't know if that's going to be possible anymore. Yeah, but we'll keep an eye out on the local restrictions and see what we can do. I think that's at 6 p.m. So we'll see if we can get people to come in after work if people are going to work, as the case may be.
Yeah, well, we can make it later if that suits better. If it ends up being online, so we'll see.
We're essential workers, right?
Exactly.
Totally. All right. Well, if that's it, then I will wrap up this stream formally. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for watching online if you're viewing this after the fact, and we look forward to seeing you here next month. Thank you everyone, and I'll finish the recording here.